Yep, that's absolutely right. I think whenever you hear somebody use the phrase peer-reviewed, you should reach for your Browning, because peer-reviewed, I'm sorry to say, is a bankrupt notion since ClimateGate, because what the ClimateGate emails from the University of East Anglia showed quite clearly was that the scientists at the heart of this process are shutting out of the peer review process any scientists who disagree with them. So it's not a question of the pursuit of scientific truth. It's not to do with the open sharing of information and the replacement of one hypothesis by another hypothesis, which is the way that traditionally science has advanced through the ages. Otherwise, we'd be still thinking the world was flat.
But in the new science, you're not allowed to question Al Gore. He says it's settled. That's the end of it. But isn't it worse, sir? Because they're not just only allowing a small inner group to produce these fake studies that have been proven to all be absolute fraud. They will never release the data. And now, because the data is being forced to be released, we find out when you actually go to Russia or go to China or go to the United States or go to South America that the numbers they use from the temperature measurements are absolute frauds every time you spot check. I mean, this needs to be fully audited. But again, the UN and all the major governments are behind this. So how do you let the crooks audit themselves?
Well, I know. I mean, Alex, have you seen the fantastic report released today by Joseph DeLeo, who's a meteorologist, and Anthony Watts of the famous What's Up With That website? It's fantastic. It says, surface temperature records, policy-driven deception. And what it argues, this very thorough report, is that the surface data records from the last century or so are so corrupt and unreliable that we cannot even be sure that any global warming whatsoever has taken place in the last century or so.
And they've got a lot of tricks, too. They will, all over the world, and this is on record now, we posted the mainstream articles where they admit it, in the last 20 years, these funded groups have set up their own reading systems, or they have contracted with airports, or they've contracted with weather centers on top of buildings, where they know the temperature is going to be many degrees hotter, and that's right. Another way.
It's called the urban heat island effect. And what this means is that the weather sites, where temperatures have been measured around the world, originally they were built maybe on the edge of town, and as civilization, as cities have grown in size, so the area surrounding the weather gauge has become more and more built up. Some of these things are sited near airports. So what this means is that inevitably the temperature records they're keeping have been distorted by the urban heat island effect of the cities, because cities are warmer than the country outside. That's how it works. So how are we to trust these records which show that the Earth is getting warmer, when it may simply be the result of the urban heat island effect? But that's not all. What happened in the sometime between the 1970s and the 1990s is that they vastly reduced the number of weather stations used to compile the world temperature data records. And what they generally did, these organizations like NASA and the Climatic Research Unit, was that they cherry-picked the temperature data sites that suited their cause, i.e. they ignored the ones at higher latitudes and higher altitudes, and they concentrated on the ones which would show that the world was getting warmer, and then kind of took an average. Now, inevitably, what happened is that you saw this upward tick in the graph, which is exactly what they want, because an upward tick in the graph shows that the world is getting warmer, it must be man-made, and action must be taken.
But the Russians and others came out and exposed that, and then they've now been forced to admit that they did indeed do that. They would just take the warmer southern areas and create an average for the entire country for the frozen north as well. The frozen northern areas of Russia Siberia and many other areas, of course they're a lot colder than southern Russia. I mean, this is bona fide fraud, and what ClimateGate proves is they're all coordinating with each other to engage in fraud.
Yes, it is, I have to say, a conspiracy on a very, very large scale. And it unites some oddly disparate groups, because on the one hand, you've got the yogurt-weaving eco-loons, the green activists, who have found themselves in this weird, unholy alliance with big oil, big banks, Rothschilds, Goldman Sachs, in alliance with the technocrats of the European Union, in alliance with scientists at various government-funded institutions. It's a very strange and broad coalition campaigning for this.
Well, the communists always work for the banks. In every case, we find that because the big banks don't want freedom. In many cases, they want monopolies, and a gang of machine gun-toting hippies can deliver it. We'll be right back with our guest. Stay with us. james-delingpole.com. That's his website, best-selling author on Obamaland. With us for the rest of the hour as we chronicle all of the fraud coming out and the fact that they're now capitulating because they know the stonewalling has backfired on them. Now they're saying, yes, we did make it more severe than it is to convince you that you need to be saved by us, but it still is bad. And I've got quote after quote where they're basically saying that, and it's coming out that Al Gore is making all this money. The Rothschilds own one of the big carbon trading scams. Pachari's hooked up with all of them. Another IPCC scientist reveals how UN scientists talked about trying to make the IPCC report so dramatic that the U.S. would just have to sign Kyoto Protocol. That's in mainstream news. Even CNN's reporting that. The BBC's having to admit that there's problems. I mean, they wouldn't report on ClimateGate for, 3 weeks after it broke?
That's right. Yeah, I think what you're going to see happening next, Alex, is that there's going to be a period of retrenchment where all the warmists suddenly say, okay, hands up, we admit there may have been a few mistakes. And you know what they're going to do next? They will chuck Pachari off the back of the sledge to the wolves. And they will hope that while the wolves devour Pachari, the sledge can move on through the snow and they'll escape. It ain't going to happen. We wolves aren't going to allow it to happen.
Same thing on Bankergate with Geithner and Bernanke. There's no way they're getting out of this now.
Well, I would sincerely hope not. I mean, these are bad guys doing.
But that's what I mean. Chunking them overboard isn't going to be enough. I mean, people are really starting to get it.
Yeah, Alex, I think something incredible is going on right now. I mean, I really feel like we're part of a really exciting movement. We are storming the Bastille. The Berlin Wall is coming down, and we, the people, are definitely winning against the forces of darkness. But having said that, although it is an exciting revolutionary moment, and it's really great to be part of this wonderful popular uprising, which incidentally is supported by the U.S. opinion polls. Have you seen the latest Pew opinion survey, which shows that Americans are less interested than ever in the idea of man-made global warming. They just don't believe it anymore. They think the whole thing stinks. So the people are on side. But unfortunately, what you have is government, you have big oil, you have a lot of the big capitalist companies, you have the European technocrats, you have stuff.
But see, James, that shows the hoax. Almost all of big oil has been aligned for over a decade because they're controlled by the big banks. They want this new derivative scam.
Oh, absolutely. The world economy has gone to pot. They need a new revenue stream. What better than to invent this wonderful new thing, which is the emperor's new clothes of global trading, and that is carbon trading. It is trading thin air. It's Enron economics.
Well, I want to talk about that when we come back, but when I first talked to you off air, you used the analogy of the Battle of the Bulge.
I'm afraid so. I think we can't talk enough about Hitler where the Green Movement is concerned, because, of course, the Nazis were the first Greens, really. And I think that what's going to happen next is that we're going to get our Battle of the Bulge moment, where the bad guys start coming back at us in force, surprising. We think we've won, but no, they've got a lot more up their sleeve just yet.
So how do you see this unfolding? I mean, they're already launching new things. The ocean's going to turn into pure acid.
Well, so many, that will definitely be one of their, I reckon that little by little they will start abandoning the global warming lie, and they will move on to something else. They will, because it's obviously very important for them to portray carbon dioxide as the bad guy in all this. The fact is that carbon dioxide is plant food. Plants grow more easily the more carbon dioxide there is in the atmosphere, and that's why when you get industrial farming, you get these greenhouses pumped with considerably greater quantities of CO2 than we have in our atmosphere right now.